In nature, energy and nutrients are constantly being transferred from one living thing to another. This transfer begins with energy from the sun and continues through all living things in a kind of chain. Every plant that grows using materials from the soil and air is part of the chain. Every animal that eats a plant is part of this transfer. Every time one animal eats another, the chain continues. This transfer of energy and nutrients among living things is called a food chain. The first link in a food chain, whether in water or on land, is always made by green plants and certain green plant-like organisms. Green plants produce their own food using raw materials from soil and water and energy from the sun. The sun's energy is captured through a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis can take place only in plants and related organisms that contain a green compound called chlorophyll. Photo means light, and synthesis, put together. With the energy of light, plants put together molecules of food from carbon dioxide in the air and water from the ground. Chlorophyll helps to change light energy into chemical energy. The chemical energy is stored in molecules of glucose that are synthesized in the plant. Glucose is a type of sugar built from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Plants use the glucose's energy and molecules and nutrients from soil and water to put together proteins, fats, starches, and other complex organic compounds. These compounds continue storing energy and serve as the building blocks of plant tissue. The compounds are food for plants, which the plants have produced for themselves. Green plants and related organisms with chlorophyll are the only food producers in the food chain. All other links of the chain have to get their food by eating or consuming it and are called consumers. The first consumer link is called the primary consumer. The primary consumer eats plants. With the help of special digestive systems, these primary consumers can break down plant nutrients and rearrange them to build their own bodies. The energy the plant absorbed from light is used by the primary consumers for movement, growth, reproduction, and life in general. And some of the energy is also stored in the primary consumers' tissues. These plant-eating primary consumers are often called herbivores. Deer, mice, and rabbits are herbivores. Primary consumers come in all sizes and shapes, from bees to microscopic protozoa, from bison to beaver. Primary consumers may eat the entire plant or just certain parts, like berries or just the nectar inside a flower. Secondary consumers eat primary consumers. This forms another link of the food chain. We often call secondary consumers predators. We sometimes call them carnivores or meat eaters too. However, in a food chain, a secondary consumer doesn't have to be large and fierce. It might be something small and delicate, like a praying mantis, or like a tiny bird that eats nothing larger than a caterpillar. A food chain can also have additional links. Each link is fed on by the link above. A tertiary or third-level consumer eats secondary consumers. Even four-link food chains are common. There's probably one in this field. Grass and weeds are the producers and make the first link. Grasshoppers that eat the plants form the second link. A bird eats the grasshopper. This bird becomes the third link. When the bird is eaten by a hawk, or weasel, or other predator, the predator becomes the fourth link of the food chain. More than 4 links in a food chain are rare. If there is a 5th or 6th link, it usually consists of a big, fierce animal, such as a bear or lion. The last link in a food chain has no natural enemies. Why food chains have limited length can be seen by observing what happens to energy in a chain. Remember, the main source of energy for a food chain is the sun, whose light energy is captured by green plants. This energy is lost very quickly with every new link. Only about 2% of the sun's energy striking the earth is ever captured by plants. Then the primary consumers take only a small percentage of green plants. For instance, consider this oak tree. Squirrels might eat the acorns. Caterpillars might eat some of the leaves. And a few insects might tunnel into the bark and wood. But most of the living tree will not be touched by primary consumers. The plant eaters in turn pass on only a small part of the energy they get from plants. For example, in a year, a meadow mouse eats several pounds of food, but its body will provide only 2 ounces of meat to the secondary consumer that catches and eats it. The rest of the energy is lost as heat. Most of the energy and nutrients the mouse took in were used in heat production or excreted as it went about its daily life. In addition, secondary consumers will not catch every mouse or other primary consumer. Many will die of other causes, including old age, before a predator gets them. So every link of the food chain gets only a small part of the energy of the previous link. The supply of energy in the chain declines very rapidly. In a matter of a few links, the stored energy is so small that no animal can live on it. There aren't enough bears, for example, to support another predator up the food chain. The fact that there are only a few bears at the end of the chain and many plants at the start is illustrated by a concept called the food pyramid. Green plants form its wide bottom. Above them, the smaller number of primary consumers makes the pyramid grow narrower. The next level of secondary consumers is even narrower. Finally, the last link of the chain holds only 1 or 2 kinds of animals and sits at the top of the pyramid. The idea of the food pyramid shows that it takes very many plants to support the very few last links of the chain. When a member of the food chain is not eaten, but instead simply dies, a different kind of chain begins. The dead plant or animal becomes a producer of what is called the detritus chain. The consumers forming the links of this chain are called decomposers. Flies, earthworms, termites, and fungi, as well as vultures, are included among them. However, most decomposers are actually microscopic bacteria. Since dead animals and plants are the largest component of an ecosystem, the turnover of matter and energy in the decomposer community is huge. The detritus chain is the Earth's recycler. It allows the nutrients in living things to be used again and again and keeps the Earth clean. Eventually, organic matter is broken down into minerals and carbon dioxide, while its energy is lost as heat. However, plants use the minerals and carbon dioxide in the presence of light to begin the food cycles again through photosynthesis. Often 2 or more chains are connected. For example, the bluebird eats not only grasshoppers, but also berries, and so is both a primary and a secondary consumer, depending upon what it is eating. Animals like bluebirds that eat a variety of foods are called omnivores. Other omnivores include raccoons, opossums, and turtles, as well as humans. When an omnivore is eaten by a predator, the food chains become even more interconnected. Toadstools grow as part of the detritus chain. These fungi and other decomposers are eaten by small consumers, which may be eaten by larger ones, and so on up the food chain again. Since food chains can be strung together in so many complex ways, biologists may talk about food webs. A food web describes the various paths nutrients and energy take in a community of food chains that overlap and intersect.